Okay, so I'm Tamsin.
Now, I hear a lot of beginner jazz students when they first get into playing the swing. And I'm not blaming you, man. It's not your fault. You just haven't been shown right yet. And that's what this video is for.
So yeah, these are just some things that I wrote before surgery, after surgery, just kind of processing things for myself. When I stand in the kitchen in the morning in the sunlight, holding a warm cup of tea to my face, and I feel the soft, warm swell of my chest as it is now against my bicep, and I realise all over again that in a week this will not be the same, that this gentle, soft pressure between two parts of my body will be gone. And I try to move my boob to the centre of my body to imagine what the absence will feel like, but it's too big and I can't get out of the way enough. For now, the softness remains. Last year, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And when I was younger, I had a different kind of cancer. I had a lymph cancer. Mm-hmm. And I was treated. It was very bad by the time they found it. So I had a lot of chemotherapy and a lot of radiotherapy. And at the time, the radiotherapy, they don't give as strong radiotherapy anymore. Mm. And it was the radiotherapy for that cancer that caused the breast cancer. Ooh. So I'd already been monitored for it. So anyway, I was diagnosed about this time last year. Mm-hmm. And because we were between lockdowns, some of my friends came over just to have a bit of a session before I went into hospital. But we ended up all taking pictures together because we had all been drinking, whatever. And I put on my bra and I was like, I think this is going to look fine once I've had the mastectomy as well. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, you know what? Just like you had said earlier to me about why you got in touch with Murielle, I thought, well, Murielle does such interesting things. I'm going to get in touch with her and see if she wants to do some before and after pictures just with this bra, because I think it's so interesting. Mm-hmm. So that's how I came into Murielle's life more directly than just buying a bra from a shop. I was like, I've got 2 weeks before I'm not going to have boobs anymore.
Monday, I cry getting dressed. It's the body I've been dressing for a long time. I don't know if that was the day before surgery. It could have been any Monday in the build-up, really. I cried so much in that period. It's just very strange to know that part of you is going to be gone. As soon as I woke up after surgery, it just felt totally different, because I still felt like me. I did feel the absence for a while. It was nothing like the imagining of the absence before it happened.
It's a law in the UK and in the US, I'm not sure in other countries, that if you have to have a mastectomy on the National Health Service, you also have to be offered reconstruction. Okay. But the more I learned about reconstruction, the more problematic I found it. Both practically, a lot of practical reasons. So when you have a mastectomy, they take away all your flesh, basically. So you're only left with your muscle. And a lot of women get reconstruction that's from another part of their body. So they take a bit out of their stomach or from their back, and I'm too skinny. I couldn't have that. I could have had a thigh one, but my thighs are really skinny. And the surgeon was lovely. He was like, oh, and you can get a thigh lift. And I'm like, I don't really need a thigh lift, to be honest. Anyway, for many, many reasons. So I had written a long thing for my friends just to put on Instagram, so I didn't have to keep repeating myself about why I ended up deciding to, it's called staying flat, which I don't think is a very nice word, but and ultimately I chose it for a sexual reason, or for sexual reasons. So I thought at first, because you have to make this choice really quickly of whether you're going to try and reconstruct or not, and lots of reconstructions go wrong. It's not like having a breast implant to get augmentation. It's very different. The only thing I could have had would be silicone right underneath my pectoral muscle. Would have had to go under the muscle. So then every time I moved my muscles, my boobs, my fake boobs would have twitched and they would have looked like silicone boobs, which for me I really liked my breasts.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that that I would always resent looking at myself and having a replacement, and that I would feel more like myself in my body, even if that meant I didn't have any breasts and didn't have any nipples.
Okay.
And obviously it's different for everybody, so everybody feels differently, but my options for reconstruction would have looked natural in a bra or in a bikini, but wouldn't have looked natural naked. And I think I've always had a relationship with my body for myself first. So I knew that I would feel more comfortable and hotter if I was, well, I didn't know, but I guessed. I felt inside myself before I had the surgery that I would feel more comfortable and hotter just in my own body.
Okay.
Whereas because I had a good relationship, I think, with my breast before, I think I would have always resented a sort of second best. To me, it would have been a second best take. Plus all the impracticalities of the possible pain and the numbness and the things that go with reconstruction. If you have reconstruction rather than augmentation, because they've removed all your nerves and your lymph system and all the fat and everything, if you have a silicone reconstruction, you don't feel anything. It's just numb because you basically have a barrier of silicone and you don't have any nerves. Whereas my surgeon was really good, and now it's almost a year later, and now I have almost all my sensation back. And I always kept an erogenous zone down the middle where it wasn't cut. And now I've even developed erogenous sensations along the scarring, which happens to quite a few women. So although I don't have any nipples anymore, I still do have those sensations just in the scar. Basically, you're sitting in the room and they tell you all these options for reconstruction, none of which sound very good. And then I said to them, well, how many people don't reconstruct? They said, 60%. But they had been presenting it as if I would reconstruct. And they say, a lot of older women, a lot of older ladies, because actually you have a much higher risk of breast cancer the older you get. So they say a lot of older ladies don't want to go through the trouble of having the reconstruction because it is risky. It's a lot of, I think 1 in 10 don't work properly. And in my case, because of my prior radiotherapy, I had a 1 in 3 risk of it not working. But there's an assumption in the UK and very much so in the US that if you're younger, you will reconstruct. And I think once I became more adamant that that's what I was doing, they were very good and they actually did let me make up my mind. And I was very lucky that apart from the one plastic surgeon that would have done a thigh swap, I had an all-female team and my surgeon was female. And I said to her once I decided that I wasn't not getting reconstruction because I didn't care about what I looked like as a woman, but I was getting it because I did care about what I looked like, and I wanted to look as hot as possible as you could look without breasts. And she did end up taking an extra hour to give me what's called an aesthetic flat closure, where they make sure that the skin is tight. And I'm very lucky. It does tend to be easier to give that smooth finish if you're skinny to start off with. And I know that because I follow a lot of discussions on Facebook in the breast cancer groups, that some of the women who are not as skinny have some issues with their closure, with their flat closure not being, they end up having extra skin hanging, or they also worry because their proportions change, and so clothes fit them differently. Whereas my clothes now actually fit me better because I've always been a very skinny person, but I had breasts, so a lot of my tops didn't actually fit me very well, and I can get away with it in a way that I think some women feel they can't, because I just look like I'm wearing clothes androgynously, but I don't necessarily look much different outwardly. But I think there is a growing realization there are more and more women not reconstructing, and that it is health-wise the easiest option to go for. So people kind of assume that you've done it for practical reasons. I think it's still quite unusual for people to say that they did it for aesthetic reasons, but it's getting more and more common. But the medical establishment don't always understand. My friends were really supportive, and I did not really much of an Instagrammer in general, but I did a series of posts explaining what had happened, what the options were, and then what I eventually chose. And that was really helpful, I think, because I didn't have to keep explaining myself.
Helpful.
It sort of took people on that journey a little bit. Now people don't notice, and I play in some bands, and we played our first show, and in our first show I just kept thinking, this is my first time playing. I play drums. This is my first time playing without breath. And it was something I hadn't even been thinking about. And suddenly I wanted people to notice, and nobody did. And I was almost annoyed that nobody noticed. I was like, this is a big deal. This is really different. And I keep trying to think what it's going to feel like. But I can't remember what it felt like before I was 11 or 12. And I remember not wanting to get boobs because I thought that would make me a woman, and I didn't like what I identified with as being a woman at the time. So that when I went to get my first bra, it was actually quite traumatic. I really didn't want it at all and put it off. My mum was always like, oh, let's go and get you a double. I didn't want a double A bra. But now I can't remember what that felt like. I can't remember what not having boobs felt like. Can you?
No, really. No.
You can talk as well. I really can't. But now that I don't, there is something very familiar about it, and it's not a memory. It's just that as soon as I had the surgery, it didn't feel weird, and I felt like I was inhabiting my body in not a strange way. So perhaps that is an echo of being a child. It feels quite free. Somebody that I was in a band with had top surgery a month before my surgery, and so we were exchanging tips on our recoveries.
Okay.
And yeah, quite a lot of people that I know have had gender confirmation surgery, different types of gender confirmation surgery, and I feel like that helped me make my choice. But it also made me, I very specifically asked for a certain shape of incision because I didn't want it to look like I'd had gender confirmation surgery. So my incisions, which are now becoming more common, echo the shape of that bra, and they do that. Whereas friends of mine that have had pectorals created, it looks very different. I am a woman who's sexually straight to this point in my life, never want to box myself in, but I've always not identified within a binary, even though non-binary wasn't and talked about when I was younger. I knew I wasn't gay because I wasn't gay sexually, or as far as I know, I wasn't attracted to women. But in terms of gender presentation, I've always done what, I was the classic tomboy when I was a kid, and I've always done what were seen as boys' things. And I think I like the idea of playing with that shadow, or kind of an echo of the feminine shape, even though, as I said earlier, I feel like my body's always been for me, which doesn't mean I don't enjoy sharing it with other people, but I've never felt the need to signify my sexuality, particularly with how I presented my body outwardly. But for myself, I don't know if I'm explaining it very well. In terms of the way I dress, I've never particularly thought, oh, I need to, I've had female friends when I've been single saying, oh, you should show off your figure more, or you've got such great boobs, you should. That was never important to me. But my body for myself and the way I feel about my body for myself has always been important. So I didn't want to feel like I had pectorals and male pectorals because I don't identify as male.
Okay.
And it was quite interesting. I was telling Murielle about this recently. I was playing a show. I was actually singing backing vocals for a friend's band. And one of the other singers who I was just getting to know, they had top surgery last year as well.
Mm-hmm.
And another friend of ours, this much older woman in her 70s, came into the backstage area and we were talking to her and she was asking me how I was feeling. And I asked her if she wanted to see, and she did. So I showed my scars. The other person showed their scars, and the three of us, it's not at all it's not at all a fear of being seen as trans. It's just I'm not. So I like to play with my own identity. Yeah, I feel good about my body now because I think, I cried a lot before surgery. I really felt like something was being taken away from me. I was really resentful that it was in the middle of lockdown, that I was single, that I was losing my breasts. I was losing this massive erogenous zone, both for me and a partner, potential partner. But then once it was done, because I still felt so much like myself and felt the same from within inside myself, it stopped upsetting me. And one of your questions was, how has your perception of your body changed since you were younger? And when I was very young, because I was a tomboy, because I thought being female meant I couldn't do the things I wanted to do or look the way I wanted to look. It's changed a lot now, but when I was younger, it was still very much, there was still a binary in what girls wore and what boys wore and what girls did and what boys did. And I was very active. And other psychological family reasons, I really didn't want to develop breasts. I wasn't excited about getting my first bra, all of that. And I wasn't excited about getting my period. I was quite scared of it. And then as I grew older and realised, I could still do whatever I want to do. It doesn't matter what body I'm in. Except that I have a crap knee and I've got all these other things of my body, but not the external things. And I think especially once I'd had the first cancer, and then you're in hospital and you're being prodded and then you're like, oh, my body made it through that. So you care more about your body as in what it can do. But then I really grew to like how my body looked as well. And I really grew to love my breasts and I really grew to love the shape of my body. And but never in a way that was, I was still very resistant to the male gaze. And I think I started skateboarding when I was a teenager and I really wanted to be taken seriously, and that awful thing that happens to, women that are like, girls that want to be taken seriously, so they kind of hide part of who they are. And that made me withdraw into myself, but I still always enjoyed my body for myself. And then I chose who I was going to share it with. I didn't have a good relationship with my body when I was a child because I was scared of being female. I did go through a period of sort of mildly anorexic, bulimic period in my early teens, which I think a lot of girls do. And again, more complicated than just the patriarchy. There's also to do with family dynamics and various things. But I grew into loving my body, but it was just that I never felt that I needed to put myself on display other than how I might feel any particular day. You know, like I didn't really like wearing makeup till I got a bit older, and I still feel like makeup is something that you play with. It's not something I feel like I need to put on every day to look a certain way. And I always, you know, I dyed my hair, shaved my hair, I had a mohawk. It's like tattoos. I've only got tattoos on one side of my body because I like having tattoos, but I like also not having tattoos. But it's always been It's always been more for me.
The boiler's gone, but that's fine. You can. Are you filming?
Yeah.
That's fine. I read 2 books about breast cancer that I buy before my surgery, but I started to read them and decided actually I'd much rather wait until after I've had the surgery because I want to know what I think first. I don't want to be informed by other people's opinions. And one is Anne Boyer's account of breast cancer, which won the Pulitzer Prize. And the other is Audre Lorde's The Cancer Journals. I know I get a lot from both books, but I think in general Lorde's book rings more true to my feelings. But even then she says, I want to be the person I used to be, the real me, after her single mastectomy. And I don't feel this at all. I feel like I am the real me. Everything that I am is an accumulation of what's gone on before. That doesn't mean I don't miss my breasts, but strangely, as soon as I woke up from surgery, I thought I would cry. I thought I would really have a hard time dealing with it. When I woke up, I had a little cry, but it was almost the relief of it being done and the shock of it being done. But then it was just like, oh, this is me now. I'm the same me as I was before, but now I don't have breasts. And I only really miss them if I see a picture of me from before. Sometimes it's a bit of a shock, but that actually feels more like, oh, that's not me anymore. So it's more the shock of seeing something that's not you rather than a craving for what was before. I think sometimes when I get dressed, I miss them. And because of lockdown, I don't have a partner, so I haven't had a sexual experience post mastectomy. So it'll be interesting to see if I miss them then. Yeah, you can see.
The photographs that I've done for Muriel are an unspoken. They're not a verbal communication. It is trying to communicate a feeling. And if I play, I'm communicating through music. This is trying to communicate a feeling through a camera. And of course it is contrived because there's an edit and you're throwing away a bunch of the images, but hopefully the images that one selects are the ones that best communicate how you're feeling internally. I don't want to make it as simplistic as, oh, I was trying to give a message that everybody's body is fine. And
yes,
because I don't want to dictate in the same way that you wouldn't say to somebody, you have to listen to a song this way and it has to make you emotionally feel this way because I was feeling like this when I don't even really know how I'm feeling when I play. I know that I might be feeling more hyper or more angsty or more emotional, but I can't put words into how I'm feeling, let alone tell somebody who's listening to it how they should feel. And I suppose it's the same with the photographs. I'm enjoying my body or feeling a strange mix of emotions about my body that I think are positive, and hopefully that's communicated to other people in a positive way, but I still can't tell them how they should feel about it. I think my body looks great. I'm really pleased with my scars and I'm really pleased with my surgery. Yeah, I'm really pleased with my scars. I'm pleased with how it turned out. But somebody else might look at it and still think it looks weird. But I like the before pictures and I like the after pictures. So before, as in, I like the pictures when I have breasts. And the first time I looked at them again, when I no longer have breasts, I thought, oh, that's a bit sad. Oh, I felt a little sad.
okay.
But also I just felt a little displaced because suddenly I was looking at a me that was no longer me.
Yeah.
but I still think they're good pictures. It was definitely interesting in the build up to my surgery and my friends at top surgery, because in the build up they were very excited and then immediately relieved after it had happened, and because they had their surgery before me. That was quite difficult in the moment, just because they were so excited about pretty much the same thing that I was going through, but for me it was something being taken away, kind of robbed from me, whereas for them it was, although it was the same physical removal, for them it was an addition. It was opening up for them, whereas for me it felt like a closing down, but in fact it wasn't a closing down. So I am very aware that my natural skinniness is I don't know that that's why that plays into why I feel that way, but I have a suspicion that may be a privilege on my side. So I like being the shape that I am, and I say I escape judgment. I still get lots of people saying, "Well, are you eating enough? You're very skinny, or you're too skinny, or you're one of the stick people." But I have a very appreciative relationship with my body. I like what it does for me, even though I can't actually do all the sports that I want to do, and I have some injuries and I'm not that coordinated in some ways. But, I get to play drums with it. I get to use it a lot. And I've been through periods where I haven't been able to use it. So I'm very appreciative of being able to use it. And I like working out. I like feeling strong in my body internally, but also through muscles. I did boxing for quite a while. I've always been very active, quite hyperactive. So I like what it does for me internally and externally.
Okay.
And I like the relationship that I have with it.
Yeah, one of the questions that you asked was talking.
Lord refers to the warrior, and a lot of women,
Okay.
You go on Instagram or you go on talk about themselves as survivors and warriors.
Okay.
But I don't. There's something about that I don't like, and I don't identify with, and I don't really know why. I think it's partly because I don't really like conceptualizing it as a fight, because actually you get so much help from the people around you, and you are being treated by medical establishment and whatever. Whilst there are lots of problems with aspects of Western medicine, definitely all the people that I came across in my treatment wanted to help, were there to help, and saved my life. So I'm not really doing the fighting, I'm just undergoing treatment. But the weird thing is that my dog has been through lots of illnesses, and she was referred to by the vets that saved her as a warrior and a fighter. And I think that's really touching. When I read it about her, I'm like, oh, she's such a fighter, such a warrior. But I don't like it about myself. So the answer to Murielle's question is, I don't really know why I don't like it, except that I think I don't like conceptualizing it as a fight. It's a journey, that you're on a journey rather than always going into battle. It's quite I don't want to say it's a very masculine way, because I think that's a bit trite, but that, we use combative words a lot in English. And actually, I just had to lie in bed a lot of the time, and other people looked after me. And so I suppose the warrior, the fighting, it's not like I've chosen a battle to fight. It's not like I am a climate justice campaigner and I'm sacrificing my potential freedom to scale a power plant. I'm not, I didn't choose to get ill. So it's not a battle that I've chosen. It's not like I'm fighting for something that I believe in. I'm just going through a journey that a lot of other people around me are supporting me or saving me. And, the doctors saved my life, not me.
Why this dog? It can't be a coincidence that you have this dog that had a lot of illnesses as a young puppy and had a small eye, and you have terrible teeth, don't you? Let me show your teeth. Let's see your teeth. Where are your teeth? Anyway, she does have terrible teeth. Yeah, there we go, thank you. But it's not that I chose her because of those reasons. She's beautiful. She's an amazing dog. I've been looking at rescues for a very, very long time, knowing that the right time wasn't now. The right time probably still isn't now, but just when I was in hospital, I thought, I have to get on with it because I don't know. I may only have... Breast cancer is a recurring cancer. Hopefully it won't come back, but it might. And the treatment that I had for the other cancers, also means that I might get ill again at some point. So I need to get on with it.
I was in hospital with people that died, and they didn't die because they weren't fighters. And they didn't die because they didn't have the spirit of a brave survivor. They died because their cancer killed them. I'm more interested in the stuff that I'm putting effort into in my life rather than an illness that I got from no choice of my own. And also, I didn't really survive through any action of my own either. I survived because other people cared for me. Therefore, I don't really want to go through life defining myself as a cancer survivor. But if I were to make an awareness raising page or to do an article about mastectomy or something like that, then that's valid in that context. But I don't want me as a person throughout my whole life to go through it as a cancer survivor. But some people also, I don't think it's wrong for people to do that. Some people very much take on that identity, and that helps them with their mental health, and that helps them with their processing of what happened to them. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just personally, that's not how I want to define myself. I did get all of that on the NHS. So it's part of a much broader welfare system. And then also at the micro level, the last cancer, the breast cancer, everyone came, friends came around to cook for me in the day and leave me food. So to say that I'm brave when most of the time I just was lying there, is to deny that community around me. Because in my 20s, I was faced with my 20s, I got the first cancer. And at the time, I was young enough that I didn't know anybody my age who had died. And that's definitely changed now, because I've lost friends to suicide and to illness and to other things. But at the time, I was the first person of anybody that of my age group in my friend group knew that was ill. And there were, I guess, when I was diagnosed, that was my sort of first real confrontation with mortality. And then during that period, I got pneumonia and I was in hospital and I was very ill during the treatment. And that was another point where I thought, oh yeah, I took pictures, like photographs in with me to the hospital, because I thought I might die now. And when I was very feeling my worst during that time, it did annoy me when other people would talk of other people and say, oh yeah, they kind of gave up the fight. Again, this fighting metaphor. They gave people talking about their mothers or grandparents because actually I was really tired and I wasn't feeling very well. And although prior to that, I'd had lots of ambition, not specific ambition, but just ambition in general. and was looking forward to do, God knows what I was going to do in my life. At the time, when I was so tired, I really thought, I've loved people and people have loved me. And I use love in the broadest sense, not just relationships. And I'd look at the cards that people had sent me, get well cards, and thought, yes, that's actually okay. And then the weird thing was that when I got better, then I didn't want to die again. Then the kind of wanting to live and wanting to do things with my life and feeling that I hadn't done things that I wanted to do yet came back. And the first cancer became almost like a story that had happened to somebody else. And then when I got the second diagnosis, that was a real oh, wait, all the effects of that treatment that I had the first time, all the side effects that when I was told about them when I was younger were just like when you read an aspirin packet, paracetamol packet, and it says there's side effects, and you're like, yeah, whatever. Suddenly I was like, oh no, that is real. And because I was trying to find information, and there's really not very much information out there provided by the medical establishment, where it's all piecemeal. I then went on to various Facebook groups for people that had the same cancer treatment that I did for the first cancer, which causes breast cancer, but it can also cause lung cancer and chest wall cancers and heart issue. People have to have their heart valves replaced and things like that. And because people only started surviving from cancer, I guess from the cancer I had, the treatment only really started working in the late 70s, early 80s. It's only really been in the last 20 years that they've seen the impact of the treatment, because they are late side effects. They happen really late. They start happening maybe 20 years after, but they can happen 40 years after or 50 years after, because people have it when they're young. So I think that did really hit home. That's why I got the dog, because when I was in the hospital the second time and I was still high and wandering around in the middle of the night, and I thought, yeah, I'm here. And again, I'm by far the youngest person in here. And I'm much older than I was the first time I was in here, but I'm by far the youngest person. The other women were, much older women with breast cancer and lung cancer. And realistically, I might be here in another 15, 20 years. So I need to get a dog now if I want to have a dog for its life. And also that informed my decision not to take the hormone treatment. Well, I did try the hormone treatment. So when you have breast cancer, you are prescribed a hormone treatment to knock back your estrogen levels, because estrogen is seen to feed breast cancer cells. And even if your breast cancer is discovered early, there may be free floating cells in your body that haven't been removed. And I feel like I have to be very careful talking about it, because I've done a lot of research on it by reading medical papers, not by going on YouTube, or by reading a lot of research on the drug, on the hormone blocker. And it made me feel so terrible and so suicidal, physically anxious and mentally, really badly mentally affected me, that I decided to stop taking it, because its benefit, the likelihood of, I'm not putting this very well, because it basically reduces the chance of the breast cancer coming back. But it was such a small reduction on my part with the type of breast cancer I had and the stage that it was found, that I decided that as I already had a likelihood of a shorter life because of all the other things that had happened to me from the treatment from the other cancer, I would rather have a good another 20 years than 20 years where I felt really, 10 years where I felt really bad on this hormone blocker, and then I would die early anyway. But I feel like I have to be very careful, because I don't want to kind of all anti-vax about it, because it's a hugely personal decision. It's always recommended that you take the estrogen blocker. Lots of people have a higher risk of it coming back, the breast cancer coming back, than I did, and they're not balancing it out against other risks for their mortality, because they didn't have the previous cancer that I had. So for me, there was very much this point of weighing up the time that I had left, and hopefully I have more time left, but I don't know. But so there was a real like a quality over quantity decision that I made, but it's different for everybody, and so I wouldn't want to advise anybody on that. I think it's everybody's own reckoning. If I could have a great 20 years, I don't even know if that is a bad option. I mean, it would be a bad option if I had children, but I don't know. Depends what I get done before then. But you know, I know. I'm sorry that I know that my grandmother. You know, my grandmother died in her 90s, and she had always been very active, but then in her last few years she had dementia and she wasn't as active, and she was quite bored. She told me she was bored, she was fed up, she was ready, because she didn't. And so, you know, especially with the first cancer, with the chemo, I felt, or at that time, I would go for walks with my grandmother, and she would walk faster than me because I was so ill on it. And this is not to say that I'm not scared of death, but I just very much know that it's going to happen. And so, yeah, I would rather have, I don't want to feel semi-ill a lot of my life if I can avoid it. I still have all the like hang-ups of any other person, of like procrastinating, not getting things done, you know, all the different things that stop you from doing the things in your life that you want to do, basically. Lack of self-esteem, you know, all of that I still have. I just know that I'm going to die, because I think some people do. Some people are amazing, like they're ill and then they're like, oh, amazing, they start a campaign and they raise thousands, you know, millions of pounds, and I am still like, no, I'm a person that's got lots of hang-ups, and I have done, there's definitely some things I have done that I wouldn't have done before, but I don't think, again, it's like the brave thing. Just because something happens to you doesn't mean you still aren't shit at all the other things in your life, do you know? Or aren't, that doesn't mean you're suddenly great at all the things in your life that you'd want to be good at all the things in your life. And it's not it's not really living with death. It's not like I wake up in the morning and think, oh, I'm going to die, so I need to make the most of the day. I probably should, but I don't think that. It's more like, an acceptance inside my core, rather than something that's driving me to live my best life, but, that I'm consciously thinking about all the time. And it was, I mean, when I was diagnosed, because even though the first cancer I had is usually curable, mine was very advanced. And also, it was just a shock to me that I would have anything like have cancer. But in some ways, I think I said on the clip, because it felt like a special thing, and I felt like I couldn't be that special. But it was very shocking, and do you know how sometimes when you travel, the first day you're in a new place, you're just hyper aware of being, and hyper aware of existing and being in this new, it's like the new environment shakes you out of your everyday. I guess it was a bit that the first week after being diagnosed, I was very hyper aware of being alive. and that was scary. The thought that might end.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, by the time that I got the pneumonia, it was scary, but there was an acceptance there. You know, illness can be very violent, and people can definitely be alone when they die when they're ill. But you know, I know of people that have died very violently, and it's not that. So I'm scared of pain and of a violent death. But of death itself is just an unknown. But it surprised me, having had the mastectomy, that I realised that actually how much shame is still attached to women's breasts. That there is a pressure to hide, to cover, to, you know, that. And it depends what country you're in. In America, you know, you don't go topless when you go swimming. And there's always this kind of balance that women have of how much do I want to enjoy my body, how much do I want to not throw myself open to the male gaze and just be myself. You know, how much do I want to be interior me, and how much do I want to be exterior me, and how much of that exterior me is affected by my breasts or other aspects of the female body.
I don't know. I think I look quite cool. I'm kind of stoked on my new body.
It surprised me, having had the mastectomy, how sexual I felt in a way that was devoid of that element of covering up that I didn't realize was still latent, that was still there inside. I don't know whether it was inside me or in the culture, but the fact is that I don't have any breasts to cover up. So that there was something strangely liberating about that. It's not even androgyny. It's just an absence of something that you were told to hide from when you were younger.
Mm-hmm.
Or some people told you to hide, or that some aspect of the culture told you to hide, or to be wary of, or to get out, to show. You know, there's always something, whether you hide or whether you show, there was always something you should be doing.
Yeah.
And to have that completely gone, but it's to feel very sexual in a way that I guess then relates to your interior. Well, you can't wear swimming trunks, you have to wear a bikini, or you can't, you know, when you're a kid and your boobs start to grow, you have to hide it, you have to put it away, that is now something that marks your body out as being different from a man that can walk around in a pair of shorts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
However you feel about it yourself, however comfortable you are in your own nakedness, there is this marking that society does.
Like I said, if I think about my breasts, I miss them, but at the same time, I like having a different body. I kind of, the only thing I don't like it in is a swimsuit, like in a bikini top, or a sports bra, and then I like to just have a little extra padding in there. But in a tight top, like in a turtleneck or naked, I would like it. I don't know. Do you know why? I mean,
you look great.
But why? It just doesn't look that weird to me, and it does feel liberating. Not in that I don't have to wear a bra away, but more in I feel hot, but I feel hot in a different way.
Everyone does have different things that happen to them on their journeys, you know, and a lot of people aren't very open about that. or don't feel comfortable being open about it, or feel like they have to be brave, and I like that for whatever reason. I feel quite comfortable with it, and I hope that might help somebody else.
Okay.
I do hope, and sometimes I see, like, I went swimming the other day and I saw an older woman kind of looking at me, but sort of smiling, and I just thought, oh, you might not have breast cancer yet, but you might get it, and then maybe that will make you feel less scared.
So yeah, I'd rather better surgical outcomes than brave. I'd rather changing the narrative so that all those women who have had mastectomies and are scared or terrified to mention it, let alone show it, because it doesn't make them feel valued as women. And I know that's the case. I often speak to younger women who say, oh, my auntie had a mastectomy, or my mum had a mastectomy, my grandmother, and they don't talk about it. They refuse to talk about it. It's like they're ashamed of it. But I don't want brave. I want the narrative to change, so that women don't have to feel shit if their bodies don't match the norm. Or anybody, not just women. People don't have to feel shit if their bodies don't match the norm. It's snowing and it's so beautiful. The flakes are absolutely massive.